We are all devastated by the news that we have just heard from Balmoral. The death of Her Majesty the Queen is a huge shock to the nation and to the world. Queen Elizabeth II was the rock on which modern Britain was built. Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Britain is the great country it is today because of her. She ascended the throne just after the Second World War. She championed the development of the Commonwealth from a small group of 7 countries to a family of 56 nations, spanning every continent of the world. We are now a modern, thriving, dynamic nation. Through thick and thin, Queen Elizabeth II provided us with the stability and the strength that we needed. She was the very spirit of Great Britain, and that spirit will endure. She has been our longest ever reigning monarch. It's an extraordinary achievement to have presided with such dignity and grace for 70 years. Her life of service stretched beyond most of our living memories. In return, she was loved and admired by the people in the United Kingdom and all around the world. She has been a personal inspiration to me and to many Britons. Her devotion to duty is an example to us all. Earlier this week, at 96, she remained determined to carry out her duties as she appointed me as her 15th Prime Minister. Throughout her life, she's visited more than 100 countries, and she has touched the lives of millions around the world. In the difficult days ahead, we will come together with our friends across the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth and the world to celebrate her extraordinary lifetime of service. It is a day of great loss, but Queen Elizabeth II leaves a great legacy. Today the crown passes, as it has done for more than 1,000 years, to our new monarch, our new head of state, His Majesty King Charles III. With the King's family, we mourn the loss of his mother, and as we mourn, we must come together as a people to support him, to help him bear the awesome responsibility that he now carries for us all. We offer him our loyalty and devotion, just as his mother devoted so much to so many for so long. And with the passing of the second Elizabethan age, we usher in a new era in the magnificent history of our great country, exactly as Her Majesty would have wished, by saying the words, "God save the King."
Hello everybody, my name is Paul from the New News, and I hope that everyone is having, well, a day. Today is the 8th of September, and there are many points in time in human history where the world kind of stops and pauses for a little bit of reflection. For my time, I thought that time was going to be 9/11 when I was very young, September the 11th, 2001, during the attacks on the World Trade Center. But there will come times and multiple points in people's lives where the world changes forever. And today is one of those days. And why I would say that I hope that everyone's been having a good day, and I hope that in your personal lives you have been. Today is a very rough day for a large portion of the world today. The United Kingdom, the Commonwealth, and many people who throughout the world have looked up to the Queen of England. Today, the Queen of England died peacefully at the age of 96 while under medical supervision, surrounded by family in Scotland. The Queen has reigned for the past 70 years as the monarch, being the longest reigning monarch of the United Kingdom and of England, and over 1,000 years of lineage. The fact is that many people in the world look up to the Queen of England, not just because it's the monarchy, because her rule certainly wasn't without its own controversies throughout the years. However, overall, the Queen did her best to not only maintain the duties of the monarchy, but to expand to ensure that it stays in the relevance of the modern age. And she also created the Commonwealth. She oversaw the United Kingdom through over 2 dozen conflicts, and she saw through the Cold War. She saw it through many points of history. 15 prime ministers, to include Liz Truss, who we just heard from just a few moments ago. So, unfortunately, today it would seem as a little bit of a dark page in history. However, much like every single day as we report the breaking news here on the New News, in the last 24 hours of news, we do so with a purpose. And that purpose is to give back. As there have been many charities and there have been many things that the royal family has backed, and there are many things that other people are backing throughout the world as well. And while luckily the Queen was able to be surrounded by family and friends, and the consorts, and as the world grieves for the loss of Queen Elizabeth II, who, unfortunately, it is the death of an icon and the end of an era. The fact is that there are many people that still continue to suffer for many, many reasons, whether that be through war and conflict, whether that be through natural disaster or climate change, whether that be due to famine, or whether that be due to drought. And so we continue on with our endeavors regardless as the world continues to turn and as time continues to march on seemingly endless. And with that, we would like to continue our work. I thought about conducting a pause today and is a moment of kind of reflection before we continue on. However, we need to continue our work in order to help people throughout the world with dealing with these crises and helping them as they try to keep them from any more suffering. So if you please check out the video description below. Please be sure to check out all of the different organizations which we have listed here at the New News. And all of these are organizations that you can donate to, that you can support and give your continual support to help people throughout the world, with 80% or more of the donations going to actually their programs and to helping people, with only 20% going to those administration's costs, salaries, what have you. And if you can't give a lot to these organizations, give a little. And if you can't give anything at all, that's perfectly okay too. Help us continue to grow the channel and have a larger impact. That helps quite immensely. The more people that are here and watching the news, the more of an impact we will have as a community. We're never doing super chats, and we will never do merchandising. We're not going to profit off of people's misery and, of course, loss. And so thank you for the support you've given us. And while there are celebrations and milestones, which I will announce later at a better time, the thing is that today is a day worth celebrating. And tomorrow will be as well in the coming days in the future. It's a celebration of life for Queen Elizabeth II. Once again, the longest reigning monarch in the history of the United Kingdom. And also, in general, just an amazing woman, mother, grandmother, national leader, and icon to many people throughout the world. And for once, as we normally talk extensively about Ukraine, and we will tonight as usual, I would like to begin on this note with the top story of the night, with the death of Queen Elizabeth II here in the United Kingdom. She died at the age of 96. She died peacefully this afternoon there in the United Kingdom at Balmoral Castle, where she had been carried over for issues. She was having medical issues, and her health seriously has deteriorated since she contracted the COVID-19 virus. Though her health has been deteriorating for some time as well, being the age of 96 will do that to you. She reigned in the United Kingdom between the 6th of February 1952 until her death today, reigning 70 years and 214 days That was the longest of any British monarchy and the second longest recorded of any monarchy of a sovereign nation. Queen Elizabeth's son, Charles, has been named the new King of England. He is Britain's first king since 1952 and has taken on the name Charles II. This is the official post from the royal family's official Twitter account regarding her death. They say the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Once again, another update coming from the official statement coming from His Majesty King Charles III. The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of the greatest sadness for me and all members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world. During this period of mourning and change, my family and I will be comforted and sustained by our knowledge of the respect and deep affection in which the Queen was so widely held. The thing is that the Queen was an icon for many reasons. This is considered the second Elizabethan age, which is I would say, even more profound than the first. It's more profound than many ages throughout the United Kingdom's history. And while it's been through a lot of turmoil and other things, it's not without its great triumphs. The United Kingdom has gone from a very war-ravaged nation, rebuilding, to one of the largest economic powers, military powers, and one of the leading countries in the world when it comes to political and social change. And that was all under the helm of both the Queen of England, Elizabeth II, and many others. The Queen of England also being in 1952 is a very different world. It's a very different world. When you're talking about world leaders, you're talking about a man's world, and that in 1952. And Queen Elizabeth really changed that. She served as a mechanic and as a driver within the Home Guard during World War II. And that's where she learned to drive. She could work on her own vehicles. Didn't bother her whatsoever. In fact, there's a pretty good story of when the Prince of Saudi Arabia, as in Saudi Arabia, women are not allowed to drive cars, came to London to visit. She actually drove him around. A little bit of a power play. The fact is that for many women, Queen Elizabeth II being in power, her respect, which she not only did she deserve but demanded amongst her peers, that level of respect and that opportunity and how she dealt with it very dutifully, very honorably, even with controversy, she dealt with it seemingly well. And she is a huge driving force for a lot of changes in workforces. She's an icon for a lot of people, but she's an inspiration for a lot of women out there who have to deal with issues such as sexism and whatnot, and really broke the mold for a lot of them as well, amongst many other colleagues that came before and since she came into power. She's done a lot of great things, and she will be very, very dearly missed. For those that live within the Commonwealth and those around the world and in the United Kingdom who may be watching this tonight, we here at the New News do send our heartfelt condolences to you, as well as to the royal family, as many others are this evening and will be in the next coming days. Remember that you are not alone in this, and while the Queen has passed, her legacy will live on. And while the era has ended, another era will dawn, and it will continue into a long and hopefully very prosperous future for everybody. And with that, we begin to roll into the rest of the international news. And while we do maintain a heartfelt note on that, we must remember it's a celebration. It's a celebration of life. We need to be uplifting. She lived a very long and prosperous life. She did very many great things. It's worth something to celebrate over as opposed to mourn. And so we continue to look at good things happening as we begin to move over here into Ukraine, and we look at some of the amazing things that are happening. We also maintain that sorrow as many terrible things are happening as well. We begin up here, and to be a little bit more uplifting, we begin up here in Kyiv, where Patron, the bomb-sniffing dog, actually met the Secretary of State for the United States, Antony Blinken. Patron is a bomb-sniffing dog. He's an EOD dog, and he works with the demining groups within the Ukrainian emergency services. What he does, he sniffs out ordnance, but he also is used quite extensively to teach children more and more as more and more children see him in a prominent eye. He's used to teach children about the dangers of explosive munitions because there's a lot of unexploded ordnance lying in and around Ukraine, and that will affect people for decades to come. The end of the war and the silence of the guns on the front will far from declare the last casualties of this war, as many people for decades will end up becoming injured and unfortunately killed by unexploded munitions across the nation. But we do have a little bit uplifting here, because look at Patron. Come on, he's an adorable dog. Can you not love this dog? No, you cannot love this dog. This is an amazing dog. This is an amazing creature. Be happy. Remember, we're celebrating. Be happy. And we do have a video of it too, because why wouldn't we have a video of Patron in this instance? Take a look.
Very good.
Good. First of all, you have to trying to establish friendship with him.
Oh, that helps. Huh?
Yeah.
That's cheating, but that's okay. Sure.
That's it.
Please. I know. How many times do you have to do this? How many visitors did you have?
100.
So that is Patron being picked up and held and living his best life there with Secretary Antony Blinken. As we continue on here, we end up, of course, getting back into some of those more sorrowful news stories, and that includes, unfortunately, child casualty updates. Quote, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, 383 Ukrainian children have died, 742 children have been injured. Most victims among children are from the Donetsk region, and that comes from the Prosecutor General's office. As we jump over here into Kharkiv, there is so we have a couple of different developments as we start getting closer and closer to the Kharkiv offensive, which has seen quite an immense amount of developments tonight. And what we see is, first of all, the shelling continues in Kharkiv. Kharkiv is no longer a strategic or tactically important objective for the Russian Federation. They simply do not have the troop concentrations in the area to make any meaningful gains here. But what we see is that, quote, Russian occupiers shelled the industrial district of Kharkiv on September the 8th. 2 people were killed and 5 citizens were injured, and that's coming from Oleh Subinov, who's the head of the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration. We also see the amount of destruction which has occurred here inside of the Kharkiv Oblast. Quote, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, Russian aggressors have destroyed or damaged 2,927 high-rise buildings and 4,819 private houses in the Kharkiv region. And that's coming from Kryolo Timoshenko, who is the deputy head of the president's office. Kharkiv region has been suffering throughout the duration of this war, and unlike areas such as Sumy, Chernihiv, and Kiev, where the Russians ended up withdrawing, they did not withdraw from the Kharkiv Oblast. This area and any land that has been liberated has been paid for in blood. The shelling does continue of some of these areas that were located along the border areas. Quote, rocket attacks on Chuhiv, Izium, and Budikiv and Kharkiv districts in the Kharkiv region on September the 8th. 8 people were injured, including 1 child. Local private houses and outbuildings were destroyed. Once again, that comes from Ole Subinov, who is the head of the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration. Well, yeah, and that brings us into the major developments of the Kharkiv offensive. The Kharkiv offensive is still ongoing. There are a lot of rumors that are flying around. So please understand that maybe some things are true, maybe some things are not. But what we have here is stuff that we know thus far has occurred. And we have evidence of it occurring. So please, with that, keep that in mind. We are trying to kind of cut through a lot of that rumor stuff, through that stuff that is just kind of confusing. There's a lot of conflicting reports on it, and we're trying to get to the very basics of this is what we know, this is what we have as fact. So the map is only changing based off of evidence that we have supporting any actions here in the Kharkiv Oblast. There are more than likely much larger gains. I've heard as much as Ukrainian forces reaching Kupiansk. I've heard it as far as they are, as we're hearing in the chat here, reportedly the Ukrainian forces have completely surrounded Izium. We are not reflecting that here because the situation, not enough information is there to really say for sure that that has happened. We just do not have the evidence to support it. But as we begin here, over here, this is Volokiv Yar. This is where we saw some fighting as of yesterday, including a shoot down of a Russian Su-25 Frogfoot close air support aircraft. We saw that shot down in this general area, as well as major fighting ongoing here. That seems to have long passed, as Ukrainian forces have pushed quite deep into Russian-occupied territory and have liberated quite a significant amount. As we see here, Ukrainian forces officially stated that the city of Kolovkiv Yar, which saw a lot of fighting yesterday, has been completely liberated and cleared. We can take a look at that video today. Once again, more Ukrainian flags going right up.
Уже можно поднимать. Піднімаємо український прапор над звільненим селом Волохів Яр. Слава ЗСУ! Слава Україні! Героям слава! Пиздець Російській Федерації!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
And as we see here, as we continue, there's been lots of liberations today. Coming from the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, quote, as of September the 8th, the Armed Forces of Ukraine have liberated more than 20 settlements in the Kharkiv region. And that's coming from Alexei Hiromov, who is the deputy head of the main operational directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. We can see that actually being stated here. This is off of the official Twitter. Currently, the military has penetrated the enemy's defense to a depth of up to 50 kilometers. Filtration operations are ongoing in a number of settlements. In the course of active operations in the Kharkiv direction, more than 20 settlements have been liberated. We come up here, and this is near Shevchenkove, which is where we have seen some of the fighting. We've heard that the Ukrainians did breach Shevchenkove yesterday. However, that has been more or less officially reported on today as being true. The Ukrainians did at least reach it today, as we know of, as there was a destroyed Russian convoy that was attempting to escape outside of Shevchenkove today. So this is a destroyed Russian convoy. As they were trying to retreat, they were hunted down and destroyed by Ukrainian forces as they were trying to enter the city.
Догорает, блядь. Ой, блядь. Дала 7-я рота жизни. Трасса. Что у нас там? Коробочки на Шевченкова. Блядь. Ха, ебать, нога, прикинь. Надо это надо снять.
So as you can see, successfully destroyed yet another Russian convoy. As we continue down here into the front, you look at this depth. I mean, we were talking about, you know, up around here, you know, Balaklia, you know, Kolokiviyar. You know, we're talking about this area yesterday. Now look just how far the Ukrainians have pushed into the lines. And we know that they pushed this deep because here we have it geolocated. This is Ukrainian forces near Yasynuvat. They have climbed a recently liberated radio tower, of course removing that Russian flag and replacing it with a much better Ukrainian flag there at the top. Take a look. We just don't need that anymore. Thank you. And of course, up goes the Ukrainian colors. Properly displayed. So there you go. We do know that they have indeed pushed this deep into Russian-held territory. The fighting does continue. We have multiple angles of a firefight here in the Kharkiv Oblast today. So this mostly comes from the view of a Ukrainian, I believe it's actually an American Foreign Legion fighter amongst Ukrainians, gunner here in the turret of a Humvee. Firing, of course, what anything better but the Ma Deuce, the M2 Browning 50 caliber machine gun. As well as there's another point of view from the front of the vehicle underneath the turret, and as well as some of the infantry that actually began this engagement before the vehicles rolled up and began to assist them in the firefight. So we can go ahead and start taking a look at this here. This is this first initial part of the footage, and we actually have as this exact same point of view, but on the very front of the vehicle. Take a look. So here's some of that very same footage right underneath the gunner's turret, and you can see this is from the front of the vehicle. This is the same vehicle at the beginning of the engagement.
Go, 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 go! Беремся отсюда, смотрим время. Давай! Скажи, по нам огонь ведеться, прямо в стекло в'їбали. Алло! 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 Алло!
So that's where that point of view ends up cutting off, and then we pick right back up here. This is the second part of that. So if you notice the tips of these rounds, what he's firing is this is 4-to-1 AP API, armor piercing, incendiary. So what he's firing, if you notice, you can see the white flashes. There's like white flashes that will happen where his rounds are impacting. Those aren't muzzle flashes of the enemy. That is the rounds. That's actually the rounds impacting his target. The armor piercing rounds will actually flash like a bright white when they hit their impacts, even if it's just on ground. It's really cool, but that's actually how you adjust your trace, or that's actually how you adjust your fires when you're shooting a machine gun, like the 50 cal. I know the webcam small or nuclear. I'm trying to maintain that there's nothing. What were those popping sounds there? The popping sounds were actually him getting shot at. So he's actually getting shot at. He's actually taking rounds and they're impacting the side of his turret. So that's what's happening here. Yeah, so there's like gunfire at a distance. There's some of that going on. There's rocket propelled grenades going off. You know, you got RPGs going off. You have the AT4s going off. He's he's trying to get a 50 cal up. He's screaming at these guys. Obviously, the language barrier is there, so they're not quite understanding. They're feeding him anything he can shoot, including 2 rockets, and he's just trying to shoot these things off as fast as possible. There's been a lot of people that are like, he didn't fire that AT4 confined space properly. I probably wouldn't either if I'm sitting in a turret, I'm asking for 50 cal ammo, someone's handing me a rocket, then I'm trying to fight infantry targets that are currently shooting and hitting my turret lip, which comes up, these turret lips that he has, only comes up to about like his armpits. So like the entire top half of his body's exposed in this turret configuration. This is an older turret configuration. It's not like the brand new M1151 gun trucks that they have. No, these are older versions. Which is also why he's able to fire an AT4 over them. Otherwise, the backblast would go in and kill everyone else in the Humvee. But yeah, he's pretty, so this guy is pretty flustered. This is a combat situation. You also see he's like rocking his gun and everything. That's because he's free gunning. This is called free gunning. Usually you have what's called a T&E, or a traverse and elevation mount, and what this is it's actually how you aim the machine gun and fire. It's a lot more stable of platform, but when you're free gunning like this, you don't have stability. So his beaten zone is actually okay for someone shooting on the move, and also because normally you don't shoot on the move, you actually stop and shoot, move forward, stop and shoot. It's the way to actually do this. This is what I did in the Marine Corps. Is I operated this. I was fully cross-trained on the 50 cal. So he's in a very difficult situation. It's very stressful. He's free gunning a machine gun, shooting on the move. There's a language barrier. Stuff's just not going right, but still pretty good footage. But this is where that footage actually picks up. This is the second part to that first video. And actually now we're back in the turret with this guy. Take a look. And so with that, I mean, he's that's in the Kharkiv district, Cruiser Cyburn. So everything's here. JL's asking, can it pierce through BMP armor? Yeah, armor piercing incendiary technically can. And so yeah, it's pretty, yeah. But yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing here. Must have been on a scouting mission, ran to a couple stragglers still to stay still so long. No, they are probably ran across like an actual group held up in this house, like an actual probably squad plus is what I'm going to guess and say, and they're actually actively engaging them. And you can see what they do is they kick out their dismounts. The two guys in the back seat, their entire purpose in life is to dismount the vehicle and to basically feed ammo to the gunner and dismount the vehicle and operate as infantrymen. So yeah, quite an amount of yeah. So so that's what those guys were doing. They got there, they lit this place up, they got suppression and fire superiority, laid down the hate with that 50. The dismounts kicked out, and this is actually coming. I'm going to say I couldn't see the house. Yeah, that's because it's called brownout. These vehicles, as they're driving along, they're kicking up dust out the back of it, kind of like if you're traveling down a dirt road in your car. They're going to kick out this dust. It's actually very hard to deal with that. If you're running a convoy, but it's called brownout, and it makes it very difficult. Plus, you also have the smoke. If you also notice, he's got to use a multi-tool to pry open the top cover latch of the 50 cal, and you got the feed. You have the feedway there. The reason why is because the 50 cal actually gets so hot firing that it will the metal heats and expands, and it makes it very difficult to pop open that top latch cover. It's also more or less, it's probably more than likely that they don't have a suitable amount of what we call LSA. There's other commonly used terms for it. It's called LSA. It's a type of lubricant that you specifically use for the 50 cal. But that is kind of what you're seeing there. He doesn't have a whole lot of LSA. You can actually hear the machine gun fire, and it goes from being this really rapid rate of fire, and then as he continues the engagement, it starts kind of chugging along. And that's because all of the gunpowder and residue and not having enough LSA or anything, and that heating and expansion is starting to take a toll. That's what we call sluggish operation. Now his 50 cal is working just fine. It's definitely rocking and rolling. Specifically, this would be the M2HB variant of the 50 cal, or the M2 heavy barrel, but which he can change the headspace and timing on, much better than the M2A1. But yeah, he's rocking and rolling on it. He's not doing really anything wrong at all. He's doing exactly what he needs to. This is from the same engagement. This is from the infantryman's perspective. This is from some of these dismounts kind of perspectives here, or as these guys kind of ran across them. Take a look.
Быстро, блядь, на прицеле стоишь, сука! Уебал нахуй! Быстро, выше, блядь! Давай! Ебать! Блядь, я дурак!
So it's kind of cool. We get multiple perspectives of a single engagement in a lot of different ways. Like, that's really cool to think about. You don't really get that very often. You don't get that many guys rocking cameras and willing to put this stuff out all at the same time. But you're getting them rolling up. You see the opening of the engagement. It's pretty close. Aravis asks, are they in the small house? Yeah, they're pretty much in that like small. It's more or less a barn. It looks like, but yeah, they're in the small house and kind of in that wood line right there. And they're kind of on the outside. They're trying to take pop shots at them from the sides too. So JLS, I think he's asking about inflatable models. Yeah. Paul, how effective are inflatable models, by the way? Does it work only if drone/satellite images are involved, and then artillery fire and high precision missiles? So there's actually a term for that. So he's referencing when they use things like inflatable models, and they used wooden models of the HIMARS, and Russia wasted entire like ballistic missiles on them. So it's actually a thing. It's actually a very long-standing tradition in warfare. The term for this is called a ruse. There's an entire game, Ubisoft actually made an entire game regarding this called Ruse, that its entire purpose is about deception in warfare. But it's called a ruse. A ruse in a warfare is a deception tactic. You see this used throughout history. Fake dead horses that could be used as sniper positions and all sorts of stuff. That's more of a camouflage kind of ruse. But you have ruses such as building entire armies. In fact, the main part of the German forces during World War II believed that there was an entire army that didn't exist, and they kept up that existence by making entire inflatable tank armies, entire inflatable airfields, and wooden airfields, and everything. In fact, it's a possibility, as we've seen, that the Russians may do the same thing by putting out wooden aircraft on some of their airfields. Using them or not, some of these airfields have wooden airplanes that are much better in satellite footage that you can actually see. But if you're just trying to quickly identify a target, especially a target of opportunity that's extremely strategically important, you're taking a look at, you're going, damn, that's a HIMARS, and then you're going to shoot at it because you want to kill the HIMARS if possible, because it's doing such immense damage to the enemy, or to you, I should say. So yeah, I remember hearing that Russia claimed that a second-story building was a HIMARS once. Yes, they did. I believe we actually covered that here. But yes, so it's a ruse, and it's been done in every war in human history. Essentially, ruses have been created. Wooden dummies and dummy armies, completely fake armies, fake dispatches, fake radio communications, fake photographs, fake everything have been created just to throw off the intelligence, just to waste resources of the enemy or make them change their movements to what would be better for you. For instance, during the Normandy invasion, part of Operation Overlord, prior to that, the operations for deception tactics, that army, the main purpose, they sent entire radio signals and I believe they even dropped a dead body. They outfitted a dead body, claimed it was like a Royal Marine commander, like captain, and gave him a whole identity and everything. And then they dropped him off the coast of Spain. And next thing you know, the Germans believe that they are landing at Calais because of all these fake dispatches and fake reports and everything else. And so they don't believe that Normandy's the main part of the invasion, even though they maintain some reserves there. Same thing. That's why the Panzer divisions for the Normandy invasions, they didn't get to the beach. They were under orders specifically from Hitler himself, because the Normandy invasions initially were looked at as being the deception, and the main landings were going to take place at Calais, and that's why they didn't want to move the Panzer divisions to be able to reinforce that. So it took an entire delay of up to 24 hours for the Panzer divisions in World War II just to get into the action. It's an information thing. It's an intelligent thing. You're going to see it throughout the entirety of the war. We know that the Russians probably have done it as well. You're going to see it from both sides. You're going to see it in every war in human history. Deception is 100% a tactic. It's a good one. Even if it seems stupid, but it works, it's not very stupid, especially in a war zone. In fact, a little bit of a deception tactic. I think this is good that I'm pretty sure we don't have to worry about that now, but something that we would do is when we were on post and we needed to clean the guns, we wouldn't take the barrels completely out of the guns, so that way the Islamic State wouldn't know if the guns were down or not. They would still see the barrel sticking out, because you have to take the barrel off the 240 and you have to take the barrel off the 50 cal to properly clean it. So we would just we would take the guts out. We would unscrew the barrel just enough to be able to take the guts out of the gun and clean the guts with the barrel still sticking out as if it was still an active machine gun. That's kind of a ruse. So that way they don't the Islamic State or whoever's watching you doesn't go, oh, they take their guns and clean them every single post period. So we know that once they get to post, once the barrels, they're going to come out of the post, they're going to expose themselves, they're going to take the barrel out of the gun so they can't shoot back. Don't got to worry about that if you just don't take the barrel out. Ivanivka over here has been officially declared liberated. The Ukrainian forces said that they did, in fact, end up liberating this as they continue to march across the Kharkiv Oblast at pretty lightning speed. We do have a photo coming here from Ivanivka. So there you go. Yeah, another village liberated. And once again, the talk is that Izium is encircled. We do not have enough information to confirm or deny that. We just do not have the information to say that. Likewise, there's been a lot of talk about Ukrainians have already made it to Kupiansk up here in the north. We do not have enough information to say that. The only information that we have is for Shevnikove over here, that we do know that the Ukrainians did end up making it to within the last 24 hours, possibly the last 48. We just don't have enough information to say otherwise. Wait a second. Okay, that's confusing. Okay, so I've just realized an interesting development here. So there's an Ivanivka Kharkiv district over here, Kharkiv Oblast down here, right? And this is where I've marked the point. But as I zoomed in to Shevchenko, as I move up here to Shevchenko, there's an Ivanivka here as well. In the Kharkiv Oblast. There's two Ivanivkas in the Kharkiv Oblast. So I don't know actually where that point... I'm going to put that point actually somewhere in the middle. So we're going to put that here. We're going to put that here for now, because I cannot confirm which Ivanivka has been taken. This is like a tiny village too. Like, it's not huge. So it's pretty, so if you zoom out enough, it doesn't even show up on the map. And the Ivanivka that you get if you go Ivanivka Kharkiv Oblast is this Ivanivka down here in the south. So, yeah, if someone could if someone knows which Ivanivka this is, please inform me. I think it might be this one up here, just because this makes sense along an axis of advance that they would go here. But this is the one that popped up, so I want to stick to that until I know otherwise. So I apologize, folks, for doing this live, but that's pretty that's pretty hard to try and justify there. I don't know which one we're gonna go with there. We got to get some more information, I guess. But and Ivanivka has been declared liberated. Over here in the daily Donetsk updates, as we move into the Donbass, we see that, quote, Russian aggressors fired missiles at the Donetsk region on September the 7th. 7 people were killed and 2 citizens were injured. That's coming from Pavlo Krylenko, which we do have his official Twitter here in regards to that update. Once again, if anyone can get better clarification as to which Ivanivka, pretty sure it's the one here in the north, but if you can get better clarification, please get a hold of me on the Discord. I would love to have that further information. So Ukrainian forces over here in Avdiivka are under a barrage right now, or have been under barrages quite significantly. Avdiivka is a Ukrainian-held town just on the outskirts of the city of Donetsk, and we're seeing that Russian forces continue to push through in these areas. Continue to try and push through these areas and try and release some pressure off of that very strategically important city here in the Donetsk Oblast. So what we see here is some of that shelling today. So there you go. That was some shelling there of Ukrainian positions there and of Divka. As we continue down here over by Tokmak, which is in the occupied Zaporizhzhia Oblast, we see that explosions have been reported near the occupied city. We do have a little bit of that there, or here for you. So as you can see, some reported explosions here. Is it on the tweet that I linked? I am not this dumb, am I? I may be. We're doing it live, folks. Yeah, look at that. Near Volokhiv Yar. Okay, cool. So we know which Ivanivka this is. So, with that, that puts us... If I can get Ivanivka here. That means that Ukrainian forces have, in fact, pushed to Volokhiv, or past Volokhiv Yar here. Or past Shevchenko and Volokhiv Yar. And managed to take some more territory. Hold on. Adjust this map here. Once again, the map is not an exact representation of what's going on. It's just kind of a general one. But it gives you a good enough idea. Is pretty much what we're kind of going for. Is you can kind of get a good enough idea as to what's happening here. Okay, cool. There we go. So you have a better idea there. So thank you very much for pointing out that I'm just an idiot. So anyway, we do have clarification. There you go. They are in Ivanivka, north of Shevchenko there. And the tiny village up here into the north, which means they've taken even more land. So normally whenever we hear a village has been liberated or taken, what we do is I take it and I put everything clear out to the outskirts, because I can consider the outskirts still probably contested. I don't just do an open field and put it all the way to the next city or whatever. But that's kind of the mentality of how we put this. And then we also cross-reference the Institute Study of War, and also they're with their daily backgrounders, and we also check the UA life map and kind of see where they're at too, and we try and go through the middle. I'm not perfect, guys. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, none of us are perfect, but at least I'm willing to correct it. As we move over here, before we get into the Kherson Oblast, over here by Saki, which is in the Crimean Peninsula, what we see is large fires were spotted near Saki. And we see down here that's we don't know if it's a result of a Ukrainian strike or if it was an accident. We do know that the Russians enjoy smoking in places they shouldn't, so we go ahead and take a look. I want to point out that the music this individual is listening to is like this really upbeat, and there's like birds chirping, is like super upbeat, like chill and relaxing. Meanwhile, there's literally the infernos of hell like burning off in the distance. Very nice. Very nice. Someone's smoking again. Nuclear says, this has nothing to do with the things today, but I'm still deeply humored by Albania changing the street name that the Russian embassy is on to Free Ukraine. Yes, I am too. I love it when countries do stuff like that. Anyway, more precision strikes were spotted here. So what we're seeing is here in Novokakhovka, there's more strikes ongoing tonight. The explosions have been reported here in Novokakhovka as the Ukrainian forces continue to use the HIMARS and the M270 Mars 2 systems to strike at Russian command, control, communications, and logistical infrastructure, further degrading their defensive capabilities. That's really what it is. We're not quite sure what these targets are as of yet, but I'm sure we'll get a little bit of an update here later today. Take a look. As you jump over here to Kherson, what we end up seeing is that more Russian equipment was seen rolling through Kherson, including what appears to be a Buk air defense system. Take a look. So we see here appears to be a Buk anti-air system, or a SAM system, surface-to-air missile system. They're on a flatbed. We also see what this appears to be a logistical truck carrying supplies out there to the front. We don't know if this is SAM missiles or not. The Russians are constantly trying. The Russians are on the back foot. Anytime you're in the defense, you're on the back foot. That really is what it means. You're either holding steady or on the back foot. The Russians are on the back foot. They have a counteroffensive. They're losing ground. That means that they are trying to react. You do not want to be in a situation where you are reacting when it comes to a war or a combat situation. Reacting means that you do not have the initiative. It means that the enemy has the upper hand. It's not a good time. That's why you want to establish fire superiority. That's why you want to RTR. That's why you want to do a whole lot of things. You want to do anything that you can to go from being on defensive to the offensive. And that's really what the Russians are trying to scrambling to do here. They're trying to plug gaps in their line. They're trying to figure out stuff that's completely, they got a bunch of stuff that's blown up. Yeah, so there's just they're trying to scramble is really what it is. Nuclear says it's scary that the explosions look like lightning. I saw lightning that had the flash illuminating the storm a few days ago. Yeah, it is kind of. If you've ever seen it in person, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit. I'd say it's more nerve-wracking, but less nerve-wracking at the same time. It just lights up the sky. It really does. I mean, it's like extra spicy fireworks. I mean, that's all it is. It's extra spicy fireworks that'll cause significantly more hearing loss. Trust me. That's why I have to wear these fancy headphones turned all the way up. Fierce fighting does continue here, as we can see here in the Kherson Oblast. This is some of the Ukrainian forces continuing to fight on as they are continuing to push the Russians towards taking a nice swim across the Dnieper River. I just want to point out this javelin gunner who refused to scream freedom out as he fired that thing. But yeah, this dude, he's super pumped. He just starts screaming. Yeah, that's a thing. It's an adrenaline rush. It's an adrenaline rush from hell is what it is. And you get unbelievably I guess there is a lot of good reason, but you just get pissed off when someone shoots at you. I don't know what it is about it. It's just you get mad. You get unbelievably mad. And so yeah, when you hit something with like a javelin and it blows up the guy shooting at you, Rooster Cyber says, I hope those javelins are hitting targets. It's damn hard to miss a javelin shot. It's damn hard to miss a javelin shot. No, those are definitely hitting targets. Every javelin is probably a confirmed kill. Damn near. You probably have a 10% maybe. 10% maybe. The DoD was talking very early on that the javelins being used in Ukraine were actually, they had a higher hit ratio than actually what the requirement was to pass as a javelin gunner in the United States military. Like they're like 97% effective, I think is what the report was very early on in the war. And that was from the Department of Defense. They're like, yeah, 97% of all javelins fired in Ukraine hit their intended targets. Yeah, it's stupid. It's hard to miss a javelin. And yes, that man, Aravis, yes, that man was shooting a javelin. He did not scream freedom out, which makes me very sad, but it's okay because at least he's blowing somebody up with it. Over here in Odessa, we see that more grain ships leave Ukraine here today. Quote, on the September the 8th, 5 more ships with Ukrainian agricultural products left the ports of Odessa through the grain corridor. And that's coming from the official Twitter account of the Turkish Ministry of the National Defense. And that's actually everything inside of Ukraine. Don't worry, we got plenty of other stuff outside of the Ukraine too. And what we do is we jump over here and we jump immediately into Belgorod, where an anti-air missile actually ended up exploding over Belgorod. It's not known if it was shooting at an intended target or if this was possibly one of the converted air defense batteries. But what we do know is that reportedly it peppered local homes with fragmentation. We do not know of anyone injured, but still... stuff blowing up over your house, generally speaking, is not usually a good sign.
Салют.
Nuclear Citizen generally wish the Ukrainians would troll the Russians even more by having U.S. field artillery song with every HIMARS video. You talking about the caissons go rolling along? Is that what you're talking about? Cyber says I'd get pissed too if someone was shooting at me. Yes, you would. That's like the immediate reaction. I don't think anyone can ever get as mad that fast in their life. And I've had people really test that too. But if you would notice here, as we jump up here and we continue inside of Russia, there's blue in Russia. It's very rare to see blue in Russia. Blue means anything you generally occupy, or anything that usually that allied powers, I say allied powers kind of in reference to, because I see Russia and China kind of as an axis of evil almost. And if you look at them in the context of history, similarly to Germany and Japan, where they have similar ideologies but their own ambitions within their own regions, Russia and China are kind of the same thing. And anyway, but there's some blue here in St. Petersburg, and it is a huge news story. And what we see here is that Russian officials appealed to the State Duma to remove President Putin from power. In a tweet published on Wednesday by Nikita Yerufez, a municipal duty for the Smolensko in St. Petersburg, the official wrote to the council of the Smolenskoye Municipal District sent a proposal to the State Duma demanding to remove Putin from office based on charges of high treason. The treason charge appears to be directly related to the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which in Russia is still referred to as a special military operation by the Kremlin. Here's that official tweet. Yeah. Pretty big. That's big. That is, I don't give a damn about the consequences. And yeah, we did end up going through, and yeah, I mean, we don't care. I mean, this is St. Petersburg. Like, this is, you know, you have Moscow and then you have St. Petersburg. Like, you don't get any bigger than that in Russia. It really doesn't. These guys have gone out and just said, yeah, Putin, treason. A treasonous bastard is who he is. Doug Wald says, I listened to another channel that's run by a couple of very young guys who ridicule Russian soldiers dying on the battlefield. Is it a violation of any of the Geneva Conventions? It is not a violation of the Geneva Conventions to ridicule idiots dying on the battlefield, no. Special military operation, just ignore that we aren't pushing much. It's all going according to plan, according to the Kremlin, yeah. JL asked Paul, what do you think about the idea of firing an SPG-9 inside of a building? Absolutely idiotic. Absolutely idiotic. I saw the video too. I was just like, I'm not going to show this because this is exactly what you do not do. The backblast, the fact that no one was injured in that is amazing. The backblast probably should have like basically made that guy's head look like jelly. Likely he had drywall behind him, so it blew out the wall and vented out the back still, which is why no one was injured. But if anyone was standing behind that wall, they would have been either seriously injured or dead, without a doubt. The SPG-9 is a recoilless rifle, and the backblast coming out of that thing, I mean, you saw, if you've seen that video, it just punches a hole right through the wall. It blows out the entire bottom part of the wall where that exhaust is venting out the back, where that backblast is going through. And it doesn't, I mean, yeah, he would have been dead, probably filled with shrapnel. The fact that the gunner didn't kill himself in the process is just a fact that he happened to pick the right wall. Do not fire anti-armor weapons inside a building unless you know what the capabilities of it are and you have that room measured out. You can do it with certain weapon systems. It's very dangerous, and you need to know how to vent out the backblast of the weapon system, and still then it's even a risk. It's not brave, but Doug Wald says, it's not brave, but I understand your meaning. It's pure cowardice. These guys also make a lot of money from super chats and merchandise. I consider that blatant war profiteering. Yeah, 100%. That's why we don't do... you 100%, if you are making money off of the suffering of other people, you're profiteering off of somebody. So I don't agree with that. That's why and nobody on this team, because there's a whole team of us that do this. Like, it's not just us, but 100% of everything we do is for charity. Like, we work full-time jobs just to make sure, like, we don't have to profit off of any of it. If I want to profit off of YouTube, I'd go and do, like, a gaming channel or something. Like, I'm not gonna... No, I want to help people, guys. Like, I'm not here to... Why would I ridicule... Like, I make my professional, however you want to call it. I'm a subject matter expert in 2 fields, okay? But, yeah, I mean, I just don't, yeah, I don't agree with it. I hate it when people do that. I do not agree whatsoever of profiting off of the suffering of people. If you're going to do something and you're going to have an impact on this world and you're going to have a following of people and you're going to have people that watch you and kind of look up to what you say, use it for an act of good. Like, use it for a good purpose. You can do one of 2 things. You can either make good decisions or you can make bad decisions. And I think profiteering off of something is a terrible decision when you're talking about people are literally dying for you to become popular. Quite literally, they are dying in another country for you to become popular. I just don't see that as right whatsoever. Never will, never have. Like, you have morals and stand for something. Otherwise, we can continue over here. Over in Norway, we see that Norway will transfer 160 Hellfire missiles to the armed forces of Ukraine. According to the country's government, launchers, aiming units, and night vision devices will also be sent alongside the missiles. The AGM-114 Hellfire, an American air-to-ground guided missile, can be launched from a closed position without visual contact with the target. Driven by a laser beam or other systems, missiles are used against objects with strong protection, helicopters, combat aircraft, drones. The basic model of the rocket has a range of up to 8 kilometers in guided and laser guidance. Think of it like a tow missile, but for a helicopter. They are cool. Hellfires are used all the time by the U.S. military. They're really, really cool. That's basically how, in the Marine Corps, I was taught. It was basically a tow missile, but for a helicopter. And they were, yeah, that's basically how I was told. Like, they're just like, yeah, you see a tank? Hellfire. When you call in that rotor wing 5 line, Hellfire. Hellfire that thing. And there you go. That's coming from the government of Norway. This is their official thing here. So that's pretty cool. And this is a helm. So while it can be aircraft mounted, they have developed mounts there on for the ground use too, because it is very effective regardless. Okay. Okay. I see who you're talking about there, Doug. As we jump down here into Syria, what we end up seeing is that Russian forces are operating and striking in areas such as Idlib. And what we see is that they're striking settlements near Idlib. Aircraft of the Russian Aerospace Forces, their Air Force, carried out airstrikes on 2 settlements located to the west of Idlib in Syria. It is known of at least 2 dead civilians, 7 more were injured.
أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر عيلي كاملة راحت هونيك حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل.
Nuclear says, on somewhat of a more serious topic, the war has absolutely shown the flaws of railroad-based logistics plans. I don't think so. I don't think that the war has shown. It's shown. I mean, it's not that a railroad-based logistical plan is bad. A railroad. So if you're talking about Ukraine and Russia, a railroad logistical plan makes a lot of sense. You don't have air superiority, so you're not going to be bringing in. It's not like you're flying in, C3 Galaxies and you're landing them in Kuwait and driving them in, into Iraq or anything. It's not like no, they're using railheads. They go to places under control. They take those railheads. They relocate everything and move through. I mean, it's not like it makes sense. It's not like the United States where we have to fly everything. You either have to ship it on a boat or you have to fly it. Like everything went to Saudi Arabia and then invaded Iraq. Yeah, had to be flown. You can't do that in contested airspace. You also can't do that if you're talking about if you just don't have the basis for it. Russia's just bad at logistics is what this tells us. The having a railroad logistical infrastructure for military purposes is amazing. It makes sense. You can move a lot of stuff with it. I mean, the United States uses it to move stuff across the country. I mean, it's not bad logistics. It's not bad logistics. It makes a lot of sense. You can't shoot down a train. You can blow up the tracks, but you can always even after a train derails, you can get it back onto the rails. I mean, it's not going to go well in the meantime, but you can get trains back onto. They have entire things where they retrack a train. There's an entire thing for it. I watched a video on them doing it because they trained to do that on a railway network, I guess. So I mean, you can, but it's not a failure. It's just that Russia is not good at logistics, and they bring in a ton of stuff. I mean, they're still bringing in a ton of equipment into Ukraine, and it's still effective bringing the equipment in. It's just you don't have anyone to drive the tank, then you don't really need the tank. Russia had about 5,000 military trucks because they relied on the railroads that much. There were no tracks. 5,000 trucks is actually pretty good, except that they tried to field more troops than they had trucks for. If they had a much more limited objective, it's not logistical failure. It's strategic planning. It's like tactical planning, tactical and strategic level planning that was the failure. They tried to take the entirety of the country in one foul swoop, and they were expecting it to just go well without really a plan B. They really didn't have if they concentrated everything in the north, didn't worry about the Donbass or in the south, and they just concentrated everything in the north, and then they went with 12 BTGs instead of 15, you know what? They probably would have been a little bit more successful. They had started about a month earlier before the Rasputitsa mud hit, probably would have been a lot more successful if they actually just like the Russians had opportunities to be a lot more successful. They started right as the mud was kicking in that bogged down their forces. They spread their forces out too much. They deployed too many troops, and they didn't concentrate the forces that they had, and that made it so that it was a complete failure, bogged them down, slowed them to a stall, and then it was quickly able to be beat back. That was really what it boils down to. And Russia, once again, has always failed at logistics. The only reason that they had the support they did in World War II is because of the Lend-Lease Act, and that alone, because they did not domestically produce enough materials to build the T-72 or the T-35s and everything else that they need. Paul or JL says, Paul, do you think that any particular weapon right now is making the biggest difference in the battles in Ukraine, or is it literally like a little bit of everything? Ooh, so yes, the battles in Ukraine, I think that there's two weapon systems that make the biggest impact, and those weapon systems I think are the HIMARS and the Mars 2. Not as big of an impact as everyone else says, because everyone is worshiping the Mars 2 and the HIMARS, especially because HIMARS came first for Ukraine anyway. The Mars 2 is technically the older system, but they make the huge impact because the destroying Russian command control, logistics, communications, and all of that, quite literally cutting off the head of the snake. And there are other major weapon systems too. The In-Law, the Javelin. Without the In-Law and the Javelin, Ukraine would have been crushed underneath armored forces, 100%. They just did not have any anti-armor weapons in enough capacity. I mean, the Stugna P is also an amazing weapon system. I love the standoff that it has between the gunner and the weapon system, so that way it really doesn't do any, or that way you're not at as much risk. I think it's a really ingenious weapon system that's domestically produced in Ukraine, which is really cool. But the Javelin, the In-Law make really great effects. The HARMS missile, I think, is a little bit overplayed, but it definitely has its own purposes, and that destroys radars. And any system, any anti-air system that has a built-in radar will also be completely destroyed by it. So that's good because it will track that. T-34s, sorry. And the thing is that we just simply, there's a lot of weapon systems. I think that a lot of the NATO weapon systems, basically anything that NATO has given Ukraine is changing the war 100% into their favor. I mean, it's just because you don't win wars with just one weapon system. Everything is a tool with a specific task. Russia doesn't understand that with tanks and armored vehicles. Which is why their doctrine is a failure and why they are losing this in the long term. T-34s, yeah, sorry, I said T-35s, and they didn't have the material, and they did have the materials for the tanks. They didn't have the rubber or the trucks to supply the front in the short term. The tanks were completed somewhat haphazardly, sometimes at the front. Yes. So they didn't have the materials for the T-34 or for the T-34s. Most of the steel was produced in the United States, especially in areas up in like Gary, Indiana, where a large amount of steel mills are, and as well as Cleveland, Ohio. And that is where the majority of the steel was, and was also transported on thousands of transport ships throughout the duration of the war to the Soviet Union. And then they were haphazardly put together, armor plates being so poorly welded together in many places that you could actually stick your finger through the armor platings. They didn't have the materials for the trucks. That's why they mostly used the GMCs that were given to them through the Lend-Lease Act, as well as a lot of oil. Unlike places like the United Kingdom, where they received a lot of material goods of pre-manufactured equipment, Russia mostly received raw goods in their Lend-Lease Act. Are the Hellfire's missiles new to the battle? They will be new to the battle. They are very, very well. They work very, very well. They were heavily used in Afghanistan and Iraq. They're very effective, and they will definitely be a game changer if employed correctly. It doesn't matter if you have the greatest weapon in the world if you don't know how to use it. As we continue back here into the Middle East, we jump over here to Al-Hol. Al-Hol has one of the largest refugee camps in the Middle East. You can actually see it here on the map. This is the Al-Hol camp. All of these people are fleeing combat zones throughout the entire region. They're all kind of congregated in one place. They're internally displaced people. The Islamic State militants were killed during a counterterrorism operation in Al Hol camp here. The Islamic State militant was liquidated, also known as killed. 6 more, including a jihadist dressed in women's clothes, were detained. An incident occurring during a campaign against MTO cells in the facility. In one of the tents, the Arab Kurdish forces came across armed militants. During a shootout with them, 2 Asayish fighters were killed. The terrorists were neutralized during the search. Security forces seized weapons and suicide belts. The CTL of the Al Hol camp has been going on for the 15th day. During this time, security forces detained more than 60 jihadists. Hundreds of prisoners were transferred to prisons, and the military has also managed to free several Yazidi women who were in the families of relatives of the Islamic State militants as slaves. If you take a look here, you can see some of the equipment that they captured. But yeah, so it's pretty. Yeah, this camp's pretty huge. It's massive. I believe there's like I don't want to say 1 million people, but I think it's pretty close. When I was in Syria, putting this on back. But when I was in Syria, when we were conducting convoys and stuff, there would be like you would literally have to stop. And you have to be extra careful because you literally run across their entire giant, it seemed endless groups of people just fleeing to like this camp and other camps as well. And they would just fill the roadways and you couldn't drive anywhere because they would surround the vehicles and as they're walking, and they just keep moving. And you got to be careful because one time we were driving and as after we got past them, after they passed us, a suicide, a vehicle, an SVIED, or a suicide vehicle, ended up detonating amongst the crowd and killing a lot of people, unfortunately. But it's something that does happen here. There's quite a lot of internally displaced people. There's 65,000 people at the camp, according to what Riley has just found. As of July 14, 2022, there are 65,000 people living in tents and makeshift shelters here at the Al Hol camp. As we jump over here into Pakistan, over in Islamabad, we have an update regarding some of the flooding ongoing here. In the past 24 hours, 1 p.m. as of between the 7th and the 8th, local time. There were 36 more deaths, with 1 adult and 2 kids died of electrocution, and that comes out to 1,391 people who have been killed, 26,652 more damaged houses. So that brings that number up to 1.7 million damaged houses. 110 kilometers more of damaged roads. That brings it up to a total of 6.7 thousand kilometers of roadway that have been damaged, were recorded. These were concentrated in the Sindh province. No major rainfall in the past 24 hours was recorded in the country except for several regions in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which I'm pretty sure I didn't pronounce that correctly, but mainly dry weather is expected over most parts of the country. However, isolated thunderstorms and rains is expected and over the upper catchments of all the major rivers. And here you can actually get that official update. As you jump over here into China, there's also an update regarding the death toll from the recent earthquake there in China. And the death toll of the earthquake here in Sichuan province has increased to 86, and 35 are still considered missing as of today, 12 p.m. local time, or 12 a.m. Eastern time. Rescue efforts do continue, and minor aftershocks, rain, and rockfalls and landslides are kind of hindering some of these efforts. You can see this from CGTN Europe, which is a Chinese affiliated news agency. Take a look. So a lot of people here in the chat talking about the situation in Syria. I could talk a little bit about the situation in Syria. So I spent 4.5 months in the country. I was in the Deir ez-Zor and Al-Hasaka provinces, which is this area right here. Specifically, as I've said before, I was in a location called Al-Shaddadi, which is right here. That's where I was mainly out of, but I also spent time in other areas as well. You can see it on Google Maps. I mean, I can literally zoom in here and show you an entire American installation at the time of basically when I was there of Shaddadi. Like, it's there on Google Maps. Like, and Google has to go to the government to cover this kind of stuff up. Not everything is there. I know that just based off of what I've seen, but this is where I was at specifically. So the issue is that here in these regions, there's a lot of refugees. There's a lot of fighting. Someone pointed out, Nuclear pointed out, oh, Russia is allied to the Syrian government in the bombing rebel camps. Yes. The Russians and the Syrians are allied. The leader of the Syrian regime, his name is Bashar al-Assad, and he is a dictator. He is 100% backed by the Russians. In fact, he probably wouldn't have a country anymore if it weren't for the Russians. The Russians really have propped him up. Bashar al-Assad is a Ba'athist. He is part of the same political movement as Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was also a Ba'athist and was the leader of the Ba'athist party until he was toppled, as well as his political party in Iraq following the invasion in 2003. He belongs to the same belief. He's the last Ba'athist leader inside of the Arab world, and he has been the Syrian civil war has been ongoing since 2014. It began with the Arab Spring. There's over 40 different factions and groups fighting inside of Syria. It's so many that the situation's so complicated that not even the coalition forces to really understand it most of the time. The YPG, the YPJ. They're doing all sorts of stuff. In fact, but they make up the majority of the SDF. The SDF, or the Syrian Democratic Forces, which control most of this region in northeastern Syria, are the ones that are working with the coalition. The main part of that for the coalition was to take out the Islamic State and also provide a deconfliction between the Russians and the Syrian National Army and coalition forces along what's called the Merv, or the Middle Euphrates River Valley. It runs through Deir ez-Zor, which is right here, coming out from the areas such as over by, this would be like Haditha and Al-Qaim specifically, which is right here on the border. It was the last strong point of the Islamic State in the country of Iraq right before you get into Syria. I was there when Al-Qaim fell, and then we also pushed in. We got them pretty much cleared down to Deir ez-Zor when I was there, and Deir ez-Zor fell right after I left. The northern part of this region, right here, Raqqa pretty much up and into here, is where you're really talking about coalition forces and the SDF. To the south, you're talking about the Russian forces and the Syrian National Army. Since the Since the Turkish invasion and establishment of about a 6 kilometer, or I believe it's, sorry, a 60 kilometer exclusion zone in the north, where the SDF have removed most of their heavy weaponry. They're looking at expanding that once again, but there's been a little bit more of a mix-up in this region. Bruce Shyburns is asking, why is America involved? The United States is involved because of Operation Inherent Resolve, or OIR. That is where the United States is going to be fighting against the Islamic State. The Islamic State is also known as ISIS or ISIL, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, or the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. The main part of the caliphate actually was located inside of Syria and actually branched out through into Iraq, where they made a lot of their gains. But it actually originates in the area of Deir ez-Zor, which is their last main stronghold before they completely collapsed the caliphate at the end of the war there in about 2018. And so there are still a lot of cells of the Islamic State here. There's several different prisons that the SDF maintain because these guys aren't being extradited, kind of like how Al Qaeda members were during the invasion in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's a coalition. It's not just the United States. The Polish are there. They're really cool. The British are there. The SAS and Royal Marines were pretty cool to work with. The French are there. There's all sorts of coalition partners that are in this country. I can't name them all, but it's an entire coalition of forces. It's Operation Inherent Resolve. It's really cool. But the thing is that this country has been completely destroyed between the Civil War and the Islamic State coalition. The Russians completely bombed Aleppo. It's actually where we see the precedences of them using cluster munitions, BM-21 Grad systems, using pauses between barrages to allow for first responders to become out into the open and become vulnerable to follow-on barrages to inflict more casualties and prevent casualties from recuperating. That's where we see the Russians also facilitating what's called the use of chlorine gas and other chemical weaponry by Assad's forces against highly concentrated civilian populations, leading to the deaths and the maiming of thousands of people. They facilitated that. In fact, the commander of the forces in Ukraine is actually known as the Butcher of Syria because he oversaw the operations in 2016 where they bombed Aleppo into oblivion, and they were continuing to bomb these areas when I was there. U.S. forces conducted a lot of airstrikes in the Merv, and part of the issues with operating inside of the Middle Euphrates River Valley is because the Euphrates River acted as the deconfliction line. But both sides were conducting airstrikes heavily within this region, and we saw a lot of air power. I have seen Russian Frogfoots and Russian Fulcrums, MiG-29s, Su-25s. I've seen just about everything they have in their Air Force flying overhead at some point, as well as a lot of helicopters. However, by the time as the U.S. was establishing its presence there, that kind of waned off as the deconfliction lines became more solid, as those lines of communication really opened up. In 2018, in February 8th, 2018, the Wagner Group, about 300 Russian mercenaries, supported by the groups of pro-Assad rebels, or pro-Assad militia fighters, actually went here over to what's called the Hanako gas plant just north of Kasham and over by Deir ez-Zor, where U.S. Marines, as well as Special Operations Forces and the Syrian Democratic Forces, and they began to attack it and barrage with tanks and began opening fire on it. What ended up happening is that the United States it called the Russians, do you have any forces in the area? The Russians replied no. The United States and coalition partners ended up calling in a massive amount of airstrikes, and they ended up bombing the hell out of it for about 3.5 hours. Killed and wounded over 300 Russian mercenaries, as well as killed about another 100 pro-Assad militia fighters. The wounded for the pro-Assad militia, we just don't know. Destroyed T-72 tanks. There's some video footage, I think, that came out of that. But that's kind of the situation in Syria. It's changed a lot since I've been there. The M10 highway, obviously, was a big thing as the U.S. was pulling out a lot of its forces. I was there on my second rotation for that, but I didn't get to go in country for that situation, though I did have buddies that ended up going back as part of those rotations as well during my second deployment. But it's a very much smaller force, much smaller contingent, and much more limited military objectives. But that is kind of the overall situation there in Syria. It's kind of a mess. It's an absolute complete shit show. there are entire towns that are completely leveled with everything but the mosque, which remains untouched. But everything else is complete, just utter garbage, destroyed. There are completely just these MRAPs and MATVs are huge, and they have craters from these IEDs that would swallow MRAPs whole. I mean, it's insane. I've never seen anything like it before or since. It was very impactful on me. That's for sure. It really changed kind of my outview on a lot of things in life. And it's really where I kind of get some of my frustrations of, life isn't so bad in a lot of places. No matter what gripes you may have, you don't live in Syria. So that's definitely it. And it's really sad to see, because these places are really beautiful. If everyone stopped killing each other, I'd go to Syria anytime. The food is amazing. Shawarma is amazing. I still rant and rave about shawarma. I spent a year and a half looking for shawarma. Finally found a place. They all sorts of stuff. It is hard to get the full image, JL. Paul's old man moment. Wagner. Let me tell you about Wagner. Yeah, don't get me started on Wagner. Yeah, the Wagner group, I hate the Wagner group. I really do. I hate every single one of them. Every single one of them. I understand why the Ukrainians really do not want to give quarter to them, and I do understand that. Merciless bastards. Anyway, as we continue on here into Africa, what we ended up seeing here is the Islamic State has actually taken control of the Talatay area here in Mali. Yesterday in Mali, Islamic State militants, after heavy fighting with Al-Qaeda on one side of the combined forces and the MSA militia on the other, took control of the strategically important city of Talatay, located 150 kilometers northeast of Gao. The Al-Qaeda fighters and the militias were unable to hold back the onslaught of the Islamic State jihadists and were forced to retreat despite airstrikes by the Mali Air Force in support of the MSA. Yep. And then as we move up here over to Morocco, Nexter, which produces the Caesar self-propelled artillery guns, they're beginning their deliveries of the mounts to Morocco. Morocco has purchased 36 howitzers on wheeled chassis for under a 200 million euro contract. One of the steps to modernize the country's armed forces, an agreement between the Moroccan Ministry of Defense and the French manufacturer Nexter was signed in 2020. Caesar is a French self-propelled artillery mount on wheeled chassis. It's used to destroy enemy artillery and manpower. A 155 millimeter howitzer with a barrel length of 52 caliber is capable of eliminating the enemy at a distance of up to 42 kilometers based off of the munitions. See, people are still talking a lot about Syria there. Yeah, it's a very pretty region. The Middle East is unbelievably beautiful. I find the Adhans in the morning, in the evenings, and throughout the day to be absolutely beautiful to listen to. I have several recordings of them that I took while I was there. They're not very good recordings because it was on my phone, but they're very, very beautiful. The sunsets and the sunrises in the desert are absolutely stunning. The people are extremely nice. A lot of people talk about, how they don't like people from this region of the world because of all the geopolitical situations and stuff going on. But more often than not, they probably have never actually met and talked to some of these people that are from these regions. Absolutely beautiful people, absolutely beautiful places, very historic, very, very full of history, amazing food, amazing culture. I mean, they are just, I can't talk highly enough. If the wars would stop if they would stop fighting wars and there's some stability to the region, it would be amazing to go and visit. I would love to be able to go there when it was very peaceful. If it was very peaceful, and I'd love to go see Damascus because it's a very historic city. I wouldn't want to go there now. Ashdod used to be a resort town at one point. It was absolutely beautiful. The architecture is stunning in some of these places. It's very impressive, and these people, once again, it's just so nice, so nice. I mean, absolutely amazing to talk to. I made some good friends with some of the guys. I actually have a YPG patch. Which is pretty cool. So that one of them gave me, and I was going to give him one of my patches. He didn't want one. He refused to take it, which is very upset. Their chai tea, amazing too. One of the guys used to have pigeons by one of our posts, and he would bring us freshly brewed chai tea every single day. Yeah, but very, very awesome. So if you ever get a chance, if it ever becomes peaceful enough, and you get a chance to go to a peaceful place, or get to go to the Middle East when it's peaceful enough and safe enough to do so, I highly, highly encourage it. It will really change your perspective in a lot of ways, and the people in this region aren't really that bad, no matter what you may have heard throughout the entirety of the last 20, 30 years where it's been a hot topic. It's not really what you think it is. And like I said, the people that really hate on these kind of people are just probably never talked to any of them or never truly met them. Yeah, I may have bad things to say about like governments and stuff. I never hate people. Hell, I like the Russians as people. I don't like their government or their military, but I like their people. Like, they're pretty cool. Like, I think they're funny, but I don't like their government. That's it. I don't hate anybody. I don't understand the point of hating somebody. Jump up here to New York, where the UN is going to be establishing a youth office. The UN General Assembly just agreed to create a UN youth office. The role of the office will be to coordinate youth issues at the United Nations to promote youth participation and rights. That's a pretty cool development. And that's a pretty big milestone. I mean, trying to get younger generations of people involved in these things has got to be difficult, because I know when I was a teenager, I saw most of the world, and I was like, man, it's hopeless. Like, there's nothing we can do. But it's really cool to see that that's not the case. I mean, I'm going to follow this, by the way. That's not the case. I mean, getting more people involved, getting younger people involved in politics and into getting NGOs set up and getting people to try and make change. Change only happens if you are involved. It only happens if you're willing to stand up for something and you're involved for something and you have a goal and you have ambitions and you actually try. Even if it seems insurmountable. I mean, it's a lot of things seem insurmountable. Some of the stuff we do here has seemed insurmountable, and yet we're 196 days now, 197 days of doing this continuously, and I can't imagine doing anything else. So it's pretty amazing that the UN is now going to have officially made a youth office to get people involved. As we jump down here, this is coming from the Kennedy Space Center. NASA does have an update regarding the Artemis 1 mission. NASA held a media teleconference at 11 a.m. Eastern Time today to discuss the next steps for the Artemis 1 mission to launch the Space Launch System, or the SLS rocket, and the Orion spacecraft from the agency's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. After standing down on the third and on the launch attempt due to a hydrogen leak, teams have decided to replace the seal on an interface called the Quick Disconnect between the liquid hydrogen fuel feed line and on the mobile launcher and the rocket while it's at the launch pad. Possible future launch dates are September 23rd or September 27th. So we will be hopefully watching that in the near future, because I really want to watch this rocket leave the Earth. I really do. I really, really, really want to see this rocket leave the Earth. You can see that here. There it is. That is the SLS. That is Artemis 1 sitting there on the launch pad still. It's holding tight. Hopefully. It's a very good picture, by the way. That's a very beautiful picture. Very well done. And if you want to check it out, this is actually the conference. It's an hour long, so we're not going to watch it here, but there is the teleconference if you're interested. Once again, you can also get any of these maps on our official website. The link's also listed below. And to wrap up today, we end up here. This is over here in Bethesda, Maryland. Well, potential gene therapy for a rare eye disease has occurred, and researchers from the National Eye Institute have developed a gene therapy that rescues cilia defects in the retinal cells affected by a subtype of LCA, a disease that causes blindness in early childhood. Using patient-derived retina organoids, the researchers discovered that the type of LCA caused by mutations in the NPHP5 gene leads to severe defects in the preliminary cilium, a structure found in nearly all cells of the body. The findings not only shed light on the future functions of the NPHP5 protein in a preliminary cilium, but also led to the potential treatment of the blinding condition. The LCA is a rare genetic disease that leads to degeneration of the light-sensing retina at the back of the eye. Defects in at least 25 different genes can cause LCA, and while there is an available gene therapy treatment for one form of LCA, all other forms of the disease have no treatment. LCA is estimated to cause childhood blindness in 1 to 2 of every 100,000 births. So it's pretty cool. So basically, the LCA, there's a couple different types of it. It affects the retina. The retina is what actually is basically allows you to see. It kind of takes in all of the light. It basically degrades your retina so you can't see visible light anymore, which therefore causes blindness in that eye. And it happens within 1 to 2 of every 100,000 births. There's a gene therapy for one of them. They've located a gene therapy that will work for several of the others, and that's what they're working on. That basically is the dumb version of everything I just read. So I hope that you guys... trust me, I feel dumb sometimes when I'm reading this stuff. So I hope that I hope that kind of helps you better understand. A lot of this stuff gets complicated. I have to look up stuff constantly regarding this. But if you want more news regarding this, you can go to the nih.gov where you can just click the link below when you jump onto our map. So feel free to go and check out more info on that, and they'll be able to probably explain that a little bit better than I can, if I'm going to be honest. I am no doctor. But other than that, I hope that you guys have, I wouldn't say enjoyed, considering a lot of this stuff's pretty depressing, but I hope that you guys learned something. And I hope that you found that this is a good project for a lot of reasons, such as, one, we report on the news, but more importantly, that we're doing all of it for charity. So I hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your night. I hope that you guys get some well-needed rest. And tomorrow's Friday. Pat yourself on the back. You made it to Friday. You just got to make it through one more day, and then it's on the weekend. So I know I'm certainly looking forward to the weekend. I've had a rather long week, but... please be sure to check out the video description below. There are a ton of different organizations down there, all of which could really use your support. All of these organizations, we're constantly trying to expand upon that list, but if you have more, please get on our Discord and shoot some more over to us. If you check out the description, you're going to see all these organizations support different charities and fundraisers throughout the entirety of the world. And these include everywhere from Ukraine to the Horn of Africa to Southeast Asia, even inside the United States, and some of them cover global regions as well. I hope that you guys have at least found that this is knowledgeable. But please, if you can't give a lot to these organizations, give a little. If you can't give anything at all, that's okay too. Please help us grow our impact here, and you do that by helping us grow the channel. The more people that are here, the more of an impact as a community we will have overall on these charities and organizations. And really what we're shooting for right now is just getting to the point where we can put fundraisers on every single stream, because that is the goal right now. We want to be able to have a fundraiser on every single stream, so every single time that we're live, we're constantly raising money to help people throughout the globe. And so you can do that by liking, subscribing, letting your friends know about us, sharing us on some of the communities that you may be involved in, liking and sharing our stuff on social media. And of course, you can always join our Discord community. It's very active and a lot of really fun and knowledgeable people in there, and hopefully I'll get to see you in there as well. Everything's in the description if you have any questions. And I hope to see you guys all later. And once again, thank you very much, by the way, for 200 subscribers now. We reached that milestone today. Pretty awesome to see that we are hitting 200 subscribers. Is just under a month ago, we hit our 100 subscribers. So that's really, really cool. Thank you very much for the support. I cannot thank you guys enough. It's been awesome. We really didn't think we were going to get to this point. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to me that 200 people have subscribed to this to listen to me talk. But it's on the up and up. I hope to see that people, I hope to see even more people joining our community. But if not, that's okay too. I just hope that you find it knowledgeable and that you're supporting these organizations. If I wanted to get popular on the internet, I'd go and do something else. But I hope that you guys, once again, found this knowledgeable. Please be safe. I hope that you, your family, and your friends remain safe. And if not, I hope you find that safety and security in the very near future. My name is Paul, and this has been The New News. Have a good night, everybody.